If you're looking to purchase or refinance a home, First Commerce Financial is a pure mortgage broker that works with several lenders to secure the best possible rate for you. Their mission is to provide transparent mortgage solutions to help you grow your overall net worth. That means you get a great deal on your home loan and receive 5-star level service along the way. They eliminate the junk fees associated with most mortgages, and they will also waive the appraisal fee for qualified borrowers if you mention you heard them here on Warchant. First Commerce Financial invites you to call 248-207-2404 or visit firstcommercefinancial.com. Licensed in Florida, Michigan, Arizona, and California. Welcome in to the Warchant.com report presented by First Commerce Financial. Oh, how good it is to be with you as we get set to detail Florida State and Boise State over in Jacksonville. 7 o'clock kickoff. ESPN, of course, carrying the game. And there it is at the TIAA Bank Field. Florida State, Boise State. Training camp wraps up, boys. It's time to get it on, time to play some football. And, of course, it wrapped up with a new offensive coordinator in Kendall Briles, offensive line coach in Randy Clements, and obviously wide receivers coach in Ron Dugans. And that means changes. What were the most significant changes you saw covering Camp G?
New offensive coordinator, I would say, is pretty significant there because we saw it last year. The offense was a hot mess. Kendall Briles comes in. It was really good to see him out there. Really struck me, and I know all of us back in the spring, we learned there was no playbook. And first I'm kind of scratching my head, go, what's going on here? How can you not have a playbook? But then I started thinking about it. What do you do now when you get something you got to put together? Do you pull out the instruction manual or do you go to YouTube? You look at your kids, the younger generation, they're on tablets, they're on their computers, they're on their phones. Everything's so visually oriented right now. So I think it's innovative, and I think it's probably the wave of the future. So I like that. But on the field, I think to me the most impressive thing was the fact that these guys got in the right places. They were lining up. They looked like they knew what they were doing. The little bit of 11-on-11 type situation we saw very few mistakes, few penalties. Now look, we saw that hot mess last week with Florida and the Canes. There's going to be a lot of mistakes in the first game, hopefully not that many in the game. But I think just if you can cut back on 50% of those mental errors you had last season, I think that's going to make a big difference. And I think that's what Briles has brought. He's brought a lot more stability with guys knowing what they're doing. To me, that's the biggest change right there. And that's freed up Willie Taggart. I saw it in practice. He gets to be more of a CEO, a big picture guy, which I think is the strength, instead of having to spend so much time trying to work on the offense, calling the plays, setting up the offense. So from that perspective, that was a very positive change for me.
Yeah, I know there's been a lot of talk too, Ira, as I shift over to you about the receivers, and obviously Ron Dugans comes in. It's exciting. There's been a buzz around this receiving core. We know that all during the preseason practices. Do you expect significant improvement in play from them? And I guess maybe lay out the reasons for that if you do.
Yeah, no, I think that group is really solid. And, if you look at this team coming into the season, there's all the talk about Tamari and Terry, obviously a preseason All-ACC pick. You also have Keyshawn Helton, who impressed a lot of people last year, and some of those guys that DJ Matthews, going into his junior year, had a great spring. So people are excited about those guys. But honestly, I think the depth of this group is really impressive, especially those redshirt freshmen. And we've been seeing them in practice. You'll get to see them Saturday against Boise State. But Warren Thompson, Jordan Young, DeMarcus Adams, that's a really nice group of redshirt freshmen. And I think now you have just a bunch of options. I'm curious to see how Kendall Briles calls a game. I mean, does he set the run up with the pass? Does he set the pass up with the run? You love Cam Akers, you love Kalen Laburn, but that receiving core is impressive as well.
Yeah, and Ron Dugans is a guy that, and I want to talk about him just for a second because I think the fan base obviously was so excited to get Ron Dugans, and we know that originally he wanted, Willie Taggart did, to bring Ron Dugans in. Just watching him at practice, and you guys can speak more to it. You saw more practices certainly than I did, but in the limited ones that I've seen, his engagement with those kids, he's a hands-on guy, he's a vocal guy, a passionate guy. He really is a guy that I would imagine is a lot of fun to play for.
Yeah, I think, and you're hearing some of the things we talked to DJ Matthews last week about him, and he just said, look, the great thing about him is, and Warren Thompson, a couple of those guys said, he's a guy you want to play for. He played at Florida State. They can watch film of him. They've actually gone back and watched some of his highlights from when he was playing for Florida State. But so he's got that way he can relate to him, but he's also a taskmaster, and a couple of them mentioned being a perfectionist. The other thing I like about him is he's very current. Even though he played at Florida State in the 90s, he's a guy that he's had success recently with players at the University of Miami. The kid that had the touchdown catch to beat Florida State a couple years ago, a bad moment for Florida State fans, but that was a kid who was very under recruited, was not a very high, big time profile prospect. And Ron Dugan's kind of helped turn him into a really accomplished wide receiver. I think the proof is what he's done recently. And I think it's a big upgrade, certainly from where they were at last year at receivers coach.
In a second, Gene, I'm going to ask you about something on the other side of the ball. But while we're still on the offense, Ira, let's talk about this offensive line. We can go through a myriad of stats that we've all poured through in the offseason, during last season, that illustrated just how pathetic this offensive line was. Absolutely inept last year, 129th out of 130 teams in yards per carry. We could go on for days about how frequently guys were hitting the backfield before ever getting to the line of scrimmage, the percentage of times the quarterback was sacked on dropbacks. Gene, we've talked about this, but there's been a change there too, and Randy Clements comes in. What have you seen from this unit in practice, Ira? How improved can they be, and are there still potential major weaknesses there?
I think they're going to be better. There's no doubt. I think Randy Clements is a very good fit for what Florida State needs right now. He's been very encouraging and is a positive force to kind of build those guys back up. As you said, the guys that played last year on the offensive line were downtrodden. They lost all their confidence last season. Now I think they built that back up some. And you got it's a different look to that group. You've got 3 new starting offensive linemen. Bavion Johnson starting at center for the first time. You'll have a new grad transfer starting at right tackle, Ryan Roberts. And then you've got a right guard as a true freshman, Dante Lucas, who everybody's really excited about, brings a little nastiness to it. You have 2 returning starters, and Brady Scott and Juwan Williams on the left side of the line, but they're kind of getting a fresh start because they're much bigger, much more physical, much more much healthier than they were a year ago, and they've settled in at those spots. Both of them moved around positions last year. I think they're in a better place. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's, again, we'll see when the games start, and we know Boise State's got a really good defensive front. But, the results so far have been very promising.
As we assess this team and we look at weaknesses and strengths and things that have to get better, the linebackers have got to be a lot better. Gene, last year, undersized in many ways. They did not take on blocks. You go back and watch the footage of that. Guys really struggled. They kind of ran around blocks trying to make plays. They weren't all that disciplined. Now, if you look at them statistically speaking, they weren't terrible against the run, but I think we both know if teams decided they wanted to run, see the NC State game, for example. You could look at the Notre Dame game. There's some stats that come out from here that you realize teams could run if they wanted to, but the problem was they could do whatever they wanted to Florida State, and if they were able to establish the run, then obviously that led to big plays in the passing game. But does this group look different now? They've brought in some kids that are going to get playing time right off the bat and some other kids that redshirted that I think add size. Talk about what you've seen from this unit.
I think at the end of the year when we look back, we're going to say, the linebackers probably improved. I think the offensive line is going to improve, but I think you could improve by leaps and bounds at linebacker. Some of the stuff you said, Jeff. Dontavius Jackson, first full year starting, didn't really do that well out there. I think he improved a little bit by the end of the year, but his supporting cast was abysmal. You mentioned Kalen Brooks as a undersized redshirt freshman is out there starting. We love Jaden Lars-Woodby. I mean, he's an incredible athlete, but he had to go move position and start as a true freshman linebacker. That's how bad it was. You had guys like Adonis Thomas who were barely serviceable. And when I spoke to people that are a lot smarter than me about football, they would just cringe when they talked about the play of the linebackers not getting the right spaces, not doing their fits. It was just a complete hot mess. But I think this year, Jackson having that full other year to get in there, he's a senior now. Woodby, we think, who stayed at linebacker, a little bit surprised, but he's in his second year. You think he's going to be able to pick up his play quite a bit there because now he's getting used to the system. And look at the biggest thing to me, though, is the depth. Last year, you didn't have Emmett Rice. You didn't have Amari Gaynor. Guys were hurt last year. I mean, that brings a lot to this unit, so you can keep these guys fresh, bring them out there. So I think across the board, there's just an upgrade at every single position at linebacker. So I think at the end of the year, this may not be just go from a bad to an average. This could actually be a pretty good unit by the end of the year.
Could be the most improved unit they're going to need to be, obviously. And we talk about the overall. We can discuss this as a panel, guys. They want to call it multiple. In truth, they're going to a 3-4, predominantly because they have to. They don't really have bona fide edge rushers, and so they've got to be creative. Now, I know, Gene, you asked on Media Day, and I was there as you were talking to Harlan Barnett, is this the most versatile group you've had to be able to give different looks in that front and different come at it from different angles as well? How do we think this is going to work? How do you see this playing out?
I really wish I had a crystal ball. It's hard. To me, that's the biggest question I have. And I think some people look at me weird when I say that I'm less concerned about the offense than the defense, because I do think the offense has talent. I think they've got a very good coaching staff in place now. I think the schemes are sound. They're proven. I think they're going to do a good job. I don't know if they're going to be, the 2013 Florida State offense, but I think they're going to be a really good offense. The questions I have are on defense, because it's a lot of the same guys from last year, but they're learning a new scheme. We've talked to some players who played in those kinds of schemes, and it is an adjustment switching from 4-3 to 3-4. The assignments are different. Talk to Dontavius Jackson. He says he's got to learn to be more patient. He can't just trigger downfield like he could and just shoot gaps. He's got to actually be more patient. It changes a lot, so we have to see how they handle it. I mean, I really don't. I don't think anybody. I wonder if Florida State's coaches have a real firm feel for how these guys are going to perform. It is a new defense.
Well, they have to be patient, but they also, once they recognize and read it properly, you then do have to trigger and fill at that point. And they didn't do a good job of that last year. And I know this is different, but that part remains the same.
Yeah, to your point, Jeff, they were not going to get any kind of pass rush. With Burns gone, if you would have you started Janarius and Kando whenever he can even get out there, I mean, there was going to be no pass rush. I think you absolutely had to make the switch. It's better for them personnel-wise, I think, especially now that they have a lot more depth at linebacker and a lot more options there. My issues are two things: the Janarius Robinson, Kandos, how are they going to do in that kind of edge stand-up role? They look a little uncomfortable at times out there, and you got to wonder how that's going to play. The other concern to me is the depth on the down linemen. I love the starting three. I think they're very as good as anybody in the country in those three starters. Who's after them now? I mean, you've got true freshmen listed on the depth chart after them, and guys, you've got Cedric Wood, who I don't know if he's taken a snap at his time at Florida State because of injuries. So it's a little scary because we know traditionally Odell Higgins likes to rotate those guys and keep them fresh, and they've always been 2-3 deep there. They're really one deep right now at that position. If you're going to run the up-tempo offense and run 80, 90 plays a game, you're going to need to bring those backups in there and those down linemen. So that concerns me. The other thing concerned about that system, too.
One thing I think we might universally agree upon, though, and maybe not, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the secondary is going to be better. I think they got bodies
absolutely.
And they've been pushed, and those freshmen came in, and I think there's a lot to like there. So if that group, that front seven, if you will, however you want to move them around, if they can make enough plays, I think then get guys into third and obvious, you might have an opportunity to see a more aggressive defense, a defense that causes more turnovers, because we certainly didn't see that a year ago. And that's got to be a byproduct of that play in the secondary as well. Well, when we come back, it's time to take a look at the FSU Boise State game. Let's take a look at Boise State in particular. An interesting team, a very successful group of five team. Some would say certainly the most successful of the group of five over the last 10 to 15 years. I think that's inarguable. All that is next on the Warchant.com report, presented by First Commerce Financial.
Did you hear that? That is the sound of Florida State football. Be ready, Noles. You bleed it, now own it. Check out Tallahassee's #1 store for FSU gear, Garnet and Gold. Locally owned for over 40 years, turn to their team to bring you the finest selection of spirited apparel and merchandise for every fan. They're always happy to see you and always happy to serve you. Visit their flagship store at 1504 Governor Square Boulevard, the campus shop over on West Pensacola, or if you're on the north side of town at 1400 Village Square Boulevard, and always on the web at garnetandgold.com. Garnet and Gold, a Tallahassee tradition you can depend on. If you're a Seminole, they're your store. Go Noles!
Welcome back to the Warchant.com report, presented by our friends at First Commerce Financial. Let's take a look at Boise State. In a second, I'll segue over to Coach Willie Taggart talking about Boise State. But this is a 10-win team from a year ago. That's what they do in the Mountain West. Dominate that conference year in and year out. They're also a team that's seen a lot of changes, including losing the Mountain West all-time leading passer, Brett Rippon, who goes on the way. That could help Florida State. We'll talk about that momentarily. But first, let's get a listen from Willie Taggart.
One heck of a football program, and Coach Harsin has done a great job. He's a Boise guy and understands that program inside out, and has done a great job with his program. And I think we all understand Boise and what they're capable of doing. They're a well-coached football team. I think they have like 14 starters back. Entire offensive line is back, which I think is a pretty good offensive line, well-coached up front, and defensively well-coached, run, get to the ball, kind of hardly ever out of position. You know, they're in position and they play hard. They play the game the way you're supposed to play the game.
That was Coach Taggart talking about Boise State. I mentioned Brett Rippon, gone, averaging 285 yards a game last year. He's the all-time leading passer in the Mountain West. Insert a true freshman, and this is a kid that was the highest-rated recruit to ever sign at Boise at the position of quarterback, and they're really excited about him. I don't know that a lot of the folks covering that team expected him to be named starter, though, that's for sure. They thought it would be a kid with more experience that's there, the Cord kid. As it turns out, it is Hank Bachmeier. That's his name. You'll see him on Saturday night. They've got a senior wide receiver in John Hightower who's really, really good. 2 new running backs. Here's the thing about Boise State, though, to say about this. That's a team that year in and year out rushes for 1,000 yards. So even though these are 2 new names, they've been able to plug and play guys like that before. Gene, big discussion here. The quarterback, the freshman starting for Boise State. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it was interesting. As you said, we both had on our shows the guy from the Idaho Statesman come on. He was even surprised that they named a true freshman as the starter for this first game. And it kind of struck me, is Boise State really playing the long game here? And not that they're conceding the first game, but they go, look, by the end of the season, he's going to be a much better option for us. We want to win our conference. Maybe we're taking a little bit of chance in that first game to start a true freshman. So I do think that's an advantage for Florida State. It's got to be. I mean, think about the last great quarterbacks in college football. Jameis Winston didn't start his whole true freshman year. Even Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, Tua Tagovailoa, none of those guys started their first game as a true freshman. They're all going to be, they either have been or will be first-round draft picks in the NFL. Even if this kid's as good as them, to get in that first game, the reason why a true freshman doesn't start in college in his first game is the speed of the game. There is no way you can replicate that in practice. He's going to be shell-shocked, especially a team like Florida State that has so much defensive speed. So I think that's going to be an advantage for Florida State. But his advantage on the other side is having that experienced offensive line. I know Ira's going to talk about it in a little bit. That gives him some opportunity to be a little bit more conservative, maybe establish the run, the safe passing game. But what I think he will have the advantage when you get behind the chains with a guy like that and you put a pressure on a true freshman in this environment, that could be big ups for Florida State. We talked about how good that secondary is going to be this year. They could be licking their chops in situations like that.
Yeah, speed of the game, too, is awfully hard to replicate in practice when you're a new kid coming on at that position from high school into college. Obviously, Gene mentioned the offensive line. Ira, let's talk about this group because I think it's inarguable. It's the strength of the team. They return 5 starters. 2 guys on the left side are going to the NFL. The left tackle in particular figures to maybe be a first-round draft pick.
Yeah, that's where I think that it kind of makes sense to go with the young quarterback. I think they feel like they're going to be able to give him a lot of time. And I honestly, if you look at Florida State's defense, you don't see obvious pass rush threats. I mean, I think when Brian Burns left, he had 10 of the defensive ends total of 15 sacks a year ago. So it's a big loss. They don't have a lot of guys that have proven they can get to the quarterback. I think what Florida State has to do is they're going to have to try to confuse him. I don't think they're going to get a ton of pressure against that offensive line. I think their key is going to be trying to confuse a young quarterback. Maybe play a little bit softer. I think what we've seen in practice, again, with those edge rushers, as Gene talked about, the question about Janarius Robinson and Josh Kando and Amari Gaynor and those guys, if they can play in space. Well, I don't know that they need to be covering people as blankets in space, but just getting 6'6", 6'7" guys in those windows that where a young quarterback's going to try to hit passes underneath that controlled passing game. I think that's going to be the key for Florida State, disguising things, bringing blitzes from different packages. Harlan Barnett talked a lot about that at Media Day when we spoke to him a couple weeks ago about the fact that he feels they can bring pressure from 11 different spots on the defense. And I think that's what they're going to have to do. Be careful, not be careful, but have a good plan for when they bring pressure, where they bring it from, and try to confuse him by disguising some looks defensively, because I don't think they're going to get home very often against that offensive line.
Switch it over to Boise State's defense. We can talk about this as a panel. 8 of 11 starters return. They have an absolute stud in Curtis Weaver, who plays a position called the stud for Boise State. It's apropos. He has 20.5 sacks over the last 2 years. He's a guy, depending on which mock draft you're looking at, they have going in the first round or early second. 270 pounds, can really move. They can stand him up. He's also strong off the edge, so that figures to be a nightmare for Florida State tackles. And we're already worried about the offensive line, so they're going to get a test right off the bat there. One thing they didn't do, Gene, they didn't guard against the pass real well a year ago, despite having a pass rusher like that. They only managed 7 interceptions last year as a team. That is precious few. As Florida State fans know, we didn't have a lot either. But the other thing about that is teams like Fresno State, Oklahoma State, and others really threw the ball all over the lot against them, and that was their Achilles heel if they had one in that conference. They did pretty well against the run, but you could throw the ball against them. Your expectations of this Florida State offense against Boise State's defense?
Well, I think that's one thing that matches up well with what Kendall Browse likes to do, and that's that quick passing game, that short passing game to establish that, because that somewhat negates where your weakness is going to be, like you mentioned, these studs on the defensive line. By the way, have you ever seen, Jeff, an offensive and defensive line on one team this experienced? Every single member of that defensive line is a 4 or 5 year player.
It's amazing.
It's
one
nuts.
guy's in his 6th year, I think. I read him. It's insane.
Or his 8th year, whatever
yeah, something
it is.
like that. It's nuts.
So, yeah, no. Yeah. So I think that you're going to have to negate that strength they have. Obviously, that's a bad matchup for Florida State, so I think you do that by the short passing game. What's also nice in that you look at if there's a weakness on this team, I think it's the linebackers. They've had a lot of disarray there. They've lost a lot of players through attrition. And here's the thing, I talked before about wearing them out. Again, the reporter from the Statesman brought up the fact that their backups are walk-ons at linebacker. If they're going to be out there 80, 90 plays in that heat, you're going to have to rotate those guys after. This is where your running backs out of the backfield, your Trey McKitties, those guys getting matched up on tired linebackers that aren't as fast or as athletic to them. You could really take advantage of that. So I really look for them to establish that short passing game. And that goes back to setting up the running game. Once you start spreading that defense out a little bit, I think that's a way you can establish the run a little bit.
New defensive coordinator comes in for Boise State, too. That's the kind of the unknown, although it's been 15 years at Eastern Washington, so my guess is they got plenty of film as to what he likes to do. He did it at one place for an awfully long time.
Yeah, by the way, if we could just come up with new titles, can we change Corey's from senior writer to stud writer? Would anybody?
No, let's please not.
That might go to his head a little bit. But yeah, no, I think that it sounds like from what we're hearing out of Boise State's camp is that they're going to be a little bit more aggressive. They want to try to get after the quarterback, which again, if you looked at Florida State's offensive line and pass protection from a year ago, that seems like a good plan. At the same time, that creates some opportunities for Tamari and Terry and Warren Thompson, Jordan Young, these other receivers to make plays down the field. So that'll be a good chess match. I think, as you said, Kendall Briles will be looking to see what this guy was doing at Eastern Washington, but at the same time, he'll have to adjust because, it's a new team and new personnel.
All right, we've got to get 3 keys to victory. I think we've laid out some here, so if we all want to do 1 or 2, that's fine. I mean, let's get to what we think are the keys to victory. And then also, of course, in a moment when we come back, we'll do the other picks of the week, and we'll also do the importance of this game, the magnitude of this first game. That's in the final segment. But right here, give me a key to victory, Gene.
I'll start out with the captain obvious, and I seem to say it every time, limit mistakes. But especially in an opener, that horror show from Florida, Miami keeps jumping out to me how many crazy, horrible mistakes, interference all over the plate, interference on a 4th and 50 or whatever it was at the end of the game. Just nuts stuff that you don't see them do in Pee Wee League. And I think in a game like this, when you're playing a team with so much experience across the board, the scenario for Boise State to win this game is for Florida State to do what it did so many times last year, and that's self-implode. That's penalties, turnovers, going 3 and out, just playing like that consistently throughout the game. That will allow Boise State, I think, to be consistent and just kind of go through the game that way. So I think from that perspective, you do that. And if you're able to do that, especially if you're able on offense, not get behind the chains and move the chains a little bit, I think you start wearing that defense out a little bit in the hot weather. So again, that goes back, don't bite yourself in the ass.
Yeah, that's always a key in life in general,
Yes.
I think, certainly. I would also throw in there for a team devoid of confidence. I understand they got to feel better about themselves after having gone through this camp, better coaching. Those guys mentioned it at Media Day. It cracked me up how many players were willing to talk about the coaching being better, throwing people under the bus. But they did, and they were ready to talk about it. So I'm sure they feel good. But what happens the first time something goes awry? For a team that lost 7 times last year and it had a here-we-go-again mentality every time something went south, you wonder if Boise comes out here and gets a lead, let's say they get a sack early and create a turnover, I kind of feel like Florida State, oddly enough, needs to get a lead here so they can calm down and get into the flow of the game. You don't want something, you never do, but experienced teams overcome problems early in games. This group hasn't had a lot of success. They get down 10-0, 14-0 because of some poor plays early. I wonder about where their head will be.
So yours is kind of get off to a good start.
Get off to a good start, handle adversity. How well do you handle that early if something goes south? But obviously, preferably, it's true of any game. But I think especially with a fragile team, can you get out to an early lead?
Yeah, I think mine kind of dovetails with that. Really, all three of I think we're going to the same place. Is not let Boise State get any cheapies early. I think to me a key would be tackling, especially tackling in space. Florida State, I just think this defense, there is a lot of talent on this defense, especially in the back end. They've got to make plays. You watched that Florida-Miami game last week, and there were so many missed tackles on both sides of the ball, special teams and on defense.
First games are tough that way.
It is. Yeah. And one encouraging thing is Florida State does tackle a lot. They hit a lot in practice. They tackle a lot in practice. If Florida State tackles well and just makes Boise State earn everything they get, now you give the offense a chance to kind of settle in. I think that's going to be – you can't get behind. You can't give up any cheapies early.
And to that about getting behind, don't you guys all feel like if this game is close, late in the third, early in the fourth, doesn't Florida State get a huge advantage because of the depth and because of the heat and everything else? I think in Boise, would they try to close in their facility and run the heaters and everything way up? But I mean, it's still, you walk out of here at 7 o'clock.
It's heartbreaking.
It's unbelievable. It's a sauna. There's just no way you can replicate that. Makes me question
why any of us live here. I agree.
And I think it would give some confidence to some of these players who maybe were lacking confidence after what happened last season.
Sure.
So to be in a game, to be playing pretty well in the third quarter, even though it's Boise State, it's not Alabama, but still against a competent team, I think it would embolden those guys, and they'd feel good about themselves.
Well, admit it's a home game for Florida State. Basically, 95 to 98% of the people there are going to be rooting for Florida State. If it's a 2017 game in the third, I mean, this place is getting loud for the Noles. I mean, you'd like to think they have a distinct advantage with that. We'll come back, again, talk about the importance of this game and also give our weekly picks. That's all next on the Warchant.com report.
Make it simple, Seminole fans. Subscribe to the Warchant.com YouTube channel for instant access to unbeatable analysis. We're talking 50 years of combined experience covering Florida State athletics, unmatched digital storytelling, including exclusive access with the recruits you need to know, and your daily dose of all things garnet and gold with Wake Up Warchant. That's only the tip of the spear. The Warchant.com message boards continue to be the most active and passionate community of Seminole fans anywhere and feature insider information you won't find anywhere else. Use the promo code WARCHANT30 for a free 30-day trial to see why Warchant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source.
Welcome back to the Warchant.com report, brought to you by First Commerce Financial. If you're looking to purchase or refinance a home and want to secure the best possible rate, all while saving money without sacrificing service, give First Commerce Financial a call today at 248-207-2404 or visit firstcommercefinancial.com. Mention you heard them here on the Warchant.com report. All right, gentlemen, 7 o'clock, ESPN, Florida State, Boise State, over in Jacksonville. On a scale of 1 to 10, I think we're all going to say like something close to 10 here. This is a big deal. How important is this season opener to Willie Taggart and the program? And I guess, Gene, I'll start with you. How could a win or loss impact the rest of this season?
I think you got to look at this really a couple ways. Isn't a loss more impactful than a win? Now, a win I'd put about a 7. I think that's good. You got a lot of fans on the fence. I think you start to get them to come over. That confidence Ira talked about with the players to beat a competent team. Beating a competent team really didn't happen last year.
BC, come on, we got the one.
BC, and even though Adazio gave that away in a silver platter to Florida State, I guess technically that was one win over a semi-competent team. So, but able to start a season, because you can feel it in the players. The players are kind of feel it. They feel confident. They feel excited about this thing. I think it would just. On the other side, though, I think it's about a 9 or a 10. I think it would just suck the life out of them to lose this game. And the fans are on the fence. If you lose, what kind of a look is this to lose in Florida, basically a home game against a true freshman quarterback against Boise State coming off a 5-7 season? Those fans on the fence are going to be running to the hills. And then what makes it worse, more problematic, is 2 weeks later, you're at a very good and even better team, in my opinion, Virginia, on the road with a really good defense. So you could start out the season 1-2, and at that point, everybody's like, here we go again. And I think even the players would have a hard time at that point buying in like they are preseason-wise if you did that. So I think this is incredibly important to get that win, to get this season off to a completely different start.
I don't disagree. I think it's really important. It's funny, you want to start. I mean, ideally, you want to win all your games. But the truth of the matter is, as you're rebuilding, you're figuring, can we get to 8 wins, 9 wins, somewhere in that neighborhood? But that's configured a lot of different ways. You can get to that number a lot of different ways. I don't know if you can get there if you start 0-1. I think you can get there if you start 2-1.
Yeah.
But if you know what I mean, I think you're going to be all right. It matters who you lose to and how. And beating Boise State.
Well, then you have to win Virginia.
Yeah.
And it comes out if you lose this, there's a 0 margin for error.
I agree, but if you beat Boise and you win your home opener and you lose to Virginia on the road in a close game, you've got a chance to achieve those goals. You lose this game, I don't think you go on the road, like Gene said, and beat Virginia, because I don't think you have any confidence.
Yeah, I think it's a 10 across the board. I don't think it's just huge. And now I hate saying that because I don't believe that season openers define your entire season in most circumstances. But in this one, they kind of do. I mean, here's the problem. I don't think they're going to win at Virginia. That's not a game I'm going to predict Florida State to win unless we see something totally different in the season opener than what we expect. It way exceeds all expectations. I think that's a big ask. Their first real road game at Virginia. Virginia's got a great quarterback. They've got their system in place with Bronico Mendenhall. That's going to be a really tough game. So now you'd be looking at, even if you lose this opener, you're going to be looking at 1-2. That's a tough start, especially because you can talk about from the fan standpoint. A lot of us talk about the fans and whether Gene's got them run to the hills. To me, it is about the players, though, because you're talking about those guys. At the end of last season, they did not have any confidence in that coaching staff. They just didn't. They can tell you whatever they want to tell you. They thought they were not put in positions to win. They spent 8 months buying in, working out, going to every practice, doing everything these guys tell them to do. If they go out there and don't get anything in return for that, it's going to be tough, man. It's going to be a tough situation for Willie Taggart and that staff. They've got to win this game.
It's a piling on effect if they lose. You're right. It's a carryover from last year, where all was lost, all hope seemed to be. I mean, obviously we're setting records for futility. They were embarrassed at home and all of that. And you lose this game. It's the first time we've seen you since getting blown out at home against Florida. There is this sense that people would say, here we go again. Fair or not, that's what they're going to do. And that sucks the air out of the stadium the following week. There's hardly anybody there. There's no life or energy around the program. And you know all this stuff becomes an avalanche effect. Let's get to some picks and make it happen here. Obviously, Alabama, real tough one to start against Duke. They're given 35. I'm going to take Duke plus 35.
Yeah, because Alabama usually sucks in those openers. So I'm with you too. I mean, that's just so many damn points. I hate laying that. I mean, and who knows in these openers? But you're right. I think Alabama's got to go in this game going, man, we're playing Duke in the opener. They pull the starters out by halftime. So yeah, I'm with you too. Go ahead and give me all those
Alabama
points.
in the cover of the first half. Find the first half number.
I know, for the real degenerates.
That's what you want to do.
Do you get a quarter number?
I can give you a quarter number.
By drive? How many yards are they going to get on this drive? I don't like Duke to have any chance to win the game, but yeah, I'd take them with the points. Alabama also, nobody's talking about the fact that they've an entirely new coaching staff.
Well, that's every year, Ira.
But
every year they have a new coaching staff.
At some point, it's going to be an issue.
I thought it was an issue
not long as
last
Saban's
year.
there.
All right, Georgia Tech's at Clemson. You talk about disrespect. My goodness gracious, Georgia Tech to be 36-point underdogs on the road at Clemson. My niece is a freshman at Georgia Tech, so this would be the first game she's going to ever get to travel to.
Nice.
This is what it's like.
I called her on Monday and said, oh, sweetheart, don't let this ruin your 4 years at Tech. Clemson minus 36. I'll give the 36.
Yeah, I think Georgia Tech's will be longing for the Paul Johnson days. They're going to be wanting to bring him back after this. Yeah, I got to go with Clemson in this. Georgia Tech bringing an entirely new staff. Clemson's got things rolling right now. I mean, I think their backups could just roll right over Georgia Tech right now.
Ira?
Yeah, I really like I like the new coaching staff they've got in. I think there's some reason for optimism at Georgia Tech.
I agree with that. That was a good hire.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a tough transition, and I'd give the points.
This is an ugly game. Nobody's really going to want to watch this game. It is Mac Brown's return to the sidelines for North Carolina. The Howell kid is going to be starting for North Carolina. Maybe some hate watching going on for people who are really hurt by his decision. I don't know. Recruitniks are unique. South Carolina is giving 9.5 points. South Carolina's offense is scary bad every year. I like their defense, but I don't know what to do with this game. I wouldn't. This would not be a part of my service. Okay, guys, if you're at home, this is not part of my service. I'm not betting this game, but for these purposes, I'll take North Carolina plus 9.5.
I'm with you there. You know how much I love freshman quarterbacks starting their first game, as I mentioned earlier. So yeah, I'm going to go with Sam Howell. He's going to piss off Florida State fans and may even pull the upset off here.
There you go, 9.5.
I'm going to be the dissenter. I'm going to lay the points with the Gamecocks.
None of us have a strong opinion on this game, folks.
I could go either way.
Virginia Tech's at Boston College. There we go, and an ACC network special, I think, right? There we go. All right. Make sure you call your local provider. Boston College is getting 4.5. That's just wrong. You don't do a Dazio like that at home. Give me BC plus 4.5.
We saw what a juggernaut Tech is in that first game last year. So, I mean, they just came in here and just looked so in sync. So, yeah, go ahead and give me the Techsters.
You're going to take Virginia Tech and lay it?
I think things are going the wrong way for the Fuente program. I'm going to take Boston College. I'm happy to get those points.
Good man.
Happy to get those points.
Have a pastry, Steve Adazio. It's going to be good times. All right, Oregon's at Auburn. 3.5 for what some are calling the best offensive line in college football. That is to say Auburn, given the 3.5 going against Oregon's stud quarterback and Herbert. I like Auburn given the 3.5.
Yeah, if there's one on here, if I had a bet to pick, this would be the one. I mean, Pac-12 going against an SEC opponent. Those usually don't work out very well for those soft Northeastern teams. So, yeah, go ahead and give me Auburn in this one.
Yeah, I'll take Auburn.
All right, final one. This is the one that matters. All right, boys. Florida State's giving 5.5 to Boise. I think you can get it 5 somewhere now, but 5.5 to Boise State.
What's the half line?
Jeff's looking like it's on the page somewhere. Where is that half line?
What kind of questions is he asking me? Oh, the number at the half. Oh, okay. I'll have to find out what they're going to. They usually cover the half, too. In this case, I would say that Boise State will cover the half.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to be in that game. We're not going to be running away with this game.
Can we turn this into a gambling show? Jump on the...
All right, who you got?
I noticed that line's been creeping up a little bit. Didn't it start about 4?
I think so, and then I saw it today at 5, but you know.
Yeah, well, a couple different lines out there you can get, but I think I agree with Ira. I think Boise covers at the half. Matter of fact, I think Boise. I'm going to throw out a very specific scenario. Boise's up 17-10 at the half.
Damn you!
Florida State wears their out wins 24-17 in the second half.
Gene's feeling it today, folks.
Yes.
You feel this? This guy is angry. He's ready for a win. He's tired of this nonsense. I'm going to take Florida State to win 34-24.
34.
I like that Gene's dropped ass on us twice in this show.
Hey, it might be three.
Three asses.
There's a sorry ass
my
in
limit's
there.
two.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay, all right.
Okay.
I'm going to go Florida State 30-24. I think Florida State's offense is going to play pretty good. I have no idea what we're going to see.
That's a cover, Ira. That is a big-time cover for the Noles.
I would not put that in your service.
All right, there we go. I took the Noles to cover as well.
Strong
Nice,
cover.
3 for 3.
There
That means
we
they're automatically they're going to lose.
Oh, don't say it. Good job, Aslan. Ira and Gene, sorry, I'm busy laughing. I'm Jeff. Thanks for watching, everybody. Be well and go Noles. We'll talk to you next time on the Warchant.com report.